Now, in Mexico, more secrets have been revealed about the ancient city of Teotihuacan.
Somewhere beneath one of the largest pyramids ever built on the face of this earth, radar equipment detected something that made the scientists operating it stop, look at each other, and run the scan again. Because what appeared on their screens should not have been there. A river. Not a symbolic river, not a painted river on a wall. Liquid mercury pooled in massive quantities deep inside a sealed tunnel beneath a city that nobody built, that nobody named, and that nobody can fully explain. And the 3 chambers at the end of that tunnel have never been opened. Hi, my name is Justine, and this is Uncovered Expedition. What Teotihuacan actually is. Before we can talk about what the radar found, you need to understand what Teotihuacan actually is. Because most people, and I say this gently and without judgment, most people think of it as a tourist site in Mexico with some impressive pyramids. A place you visit, take photographs at, buy an obsidian figurine from a vendor on the way out, and sure, technically yes, but that description is like calling the ocean a large puddle. It is not wrong, exactly. It just misses basically everything. Teotihuacan is located about 30 miles northeast of modern-day Mexico City in the Valley of Mexico. At its peak, somewhere between 100 and 200 CE, give or take, it was one of the largest cities on Earth. Not one of the largest cities in the Americas, one of the largest cities on the planet. Population estimates range from 100,000 to 200,000 people, which would have made it comparable to ancient Rome at its height. The city covers 8 square miles. It contains over 2,000 apartment complexes. It has a street grid so precise and so deliberately planned that engineers studying it today argue it could not have been designed without sophisticated survey tools. The Avenue of the Dead, the main north-south corridor, stretches for 1.5 miles through the heart of the city, flanked by pyramids and temples of staggering scale. The Pyramid of the Sun, which is the largest structure at the site, is the 3rd largest pyramid in the world by volume. Let that sink in. 3rd largest pyramid on Earth, and we do not know who built it. Here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The name Teotihuacan was not given by the people who built it. It was given by the Aztecs, who arrived centuries after the city had already been abandoned. In Nahuatl, the Aztec language, Teotihuacan means the place where men become gods, or alternatively, the birthplace of the gods. The Aztecs walked into a ruined city they had nothing to do with and decided the only explanation for what they were seeing was divinity. We do not know what the original inhabitants called their city. We do not know what language they spoke. We do not know who ruled it, or whether anyone ruled it at all. We have no deciphered written language, no royal inscriptions, no identified founder. For a city of this magnitude, that absence of identity is not just unusual, it is unprecedented. The man who found the tunnel. In 2003, a heavy rainstorm hit the ancient site of Teotihuacan. This is relevant, I promise. The rain caused a small sinkhole to open in the floor of the plaza, directly in front of the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent, which is the 3rd and smallest of Teotihuacan's major pyramids, and in many ways the most mysterious. An archaeologist named Sergio Gomez noticed the hole. He lowered a camera into it. What he saw at the bottom was the entrance to a tunnel. Now, I want to be clear about who Sergio Gomez is because this matters. He is not a television personality. He is not a sensationalist. He is a meticulous, methodical archaeologist who works for Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, which is an organization not exactly known for making wild claims. Gomez has spent his entire career at Teotihuacan. He knows this site the way most of us know our own houses. When he saw that tunnel entrance, he understood immediately that something significant had just revealed itself. What followed was not a dramatic Indiana Jones-style rush into the unknown. It was 17 years of the most painstaking excavation work you can imagine. The tunnel was flooded with contaminated water and had to be pumped out. The passage was intentionally sealed with enormous stones and debris that had to be removed by hand, bucket by bucket, to avoid damaging anything that might lie beneath. The tunnel stretched for more than 330 feet directly beneath the pyramid above it. Gomez expected to find a royal tomb. That was the working theory. Every major Mesoamerican pyramid ever excavated has eventually yielded some kind of royal burial. The Maya built pyramids over their kings. The Aztecs consecrated their temples with the remains of rulers and sacrificial victims. It made complete sense that Teotihuacan's most sacred pyramid would conceal the tomb of whoever founded this civilization, whoever set all of this in motion. That is not what he found. What he found was considerably stranger and considerably more difficult to explain. The radar scans change everything. Before excavation teams could go much further down the tunnel, researchers made the decision to scan what lay ahead before physically disturbing it. This is standard modern archaeological practice. You do not go in blind when you have technology that can see for you. The tools they used included ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, which is a technique that maps underground spaces by measuring how electrical currents move through different materials. Think of it as an X-ray for the Earth itself. What those scans revealed stopped the team cold. At the far end of the tunnel, approximately 60 feet below the surface, the radar detected not one chamber, but three. Three large enclosed rooms arranged in a cross-shaped or cruciform pattern beneath the pyramid, buried and sealed, untouched since they were closed sometime around 150 CE, which is nearly 1900 years ago. Let me say that again because I want it to land properly. These rooms have been sealed for nearly 1900 years. The radar images showed objects inside those chambers, dense masses consistent with offerings or artifacts, irregular shapes that suggested statues or carved objects, and something else. Something that showed up on the scans as a highly reflective anomaly pooled across significant portions of the tunnel floor in the final approaches to the chambers. The scan team initially could not identify it. The reflective signature was unlike soil, unlike stone, unlike water, unlike anything organic. They ran the scans again. The anomaly remained consistent, measurable, and deeply strange. Then geochemical samples were taken from the tunnel floor, and the laboratory results came back, and the word that appeared on those results was mercury. Not traces of mercury, not residual contamination. Large pools of liquid mercury, deliberately placed, deliberately contained, stretching across the floor of the tunnel in quantities that had no business being there. The researchers published their findings in 2015, and for about 48 hours, the archaeological world lost its collective mind. Then most people forgot about it, which is honestly its own kind of mystery. Liquid mercury, the discovery that broke the internet and several archaeologists. Okay, so liquid mercury. Let us talk about this properly, because I know exactly what happens when most people hear this for the first time. You file it under interesting ancient mystery, you think that is genuinely cool, and then you move on with your day. I am asking you, sincerely, do not do that. Because the more you sit with the specific details of this discovery, the more the floor starts to shift under you. Let us start with the basics, because they matter. Mercury does not just exist in liquid form underground naturally. It does not seep out of rocks and collect in pools beneath pyramids by accident. To get liquid mercury, you start with cinnabar, which is mercury sulfide, a deep red mineral ore. You mine it. Then you heat it to extremely high temperatures, over 350 degrees Celsius, to drive off the sulfur and release the liquid metal. Then you collect it. Then you store it without spilling it, which, if you have ever thought about what it means to transport liquid metal across rough terrain without modern containers, is already a significant logistical challenge. Then you carry it, somehow, across hundreds of miles, and deposit it with apparent precision inside an underground tunnel. This is not a simple operation. This is not something you do casually or accidentally. By any reasonable modern standard, what the builders of Teotihuacan accomplished in getting mercury beneath that pyramid qualifies as an industrial undertaking. Organized extraction, specialized processing, long-distance transportation, deliberate placement. Every single step of that chain required knowledge, coordination, and sustained intentional effort. And here is where it gets heavier. The nearest known cinnabar deposits to Teotihuacan are located in the present-day states of Querétaro or Huitzuco, both hundreds of miles away. Some researchers believe the mercury may have traveled from even more distant sources, which means someone at Teotihuacan made a decision. They looked at the tunnel being constructed beneath their most sacred pyramid, and they decided that what needed to go inside it was a material that had to be extracted from mines hundreds of miles away, processed with high heat, and transported across terrain that had no paved roads, no wheeled vehicles, and no infrastructure in the modern sense. That decision was not made casually. That decision was made by people who knew exactly what they wanted and exactly why they wanted it, and we have absolutely no idea what the why was. The quantities involved make this even harder to dismiss. Researchers were not describing ceremonial traces or ritual smears of mercury. They described pools. Significant, measurable, deliberately contained accumulations of liquid metal spread across portions of the tunnel floor, enough to represent something at scale. The leading interpretation among researchers is that the mercury was meant to evoke a body of water, an underground river, a subterranean lake, the liquid boundary between the world of the living and whatever the builders of Teotihuacan believed existed beneath it. But here is the detail I cannot get past, the one that has stuck with me since I first read the excavation reports late on a Tuesday night, which is exactly the kind of decision-making that leads to scripts like this one. Liquid mercury is toxic, severely toxic. In an enclosed underground tunnel, mercury vapor accumulates. Extended exposure causes neurological damage, organ failure, death. The workers who placed this mercury in the tunnel knew they were working with a dangerous substance. The priests or rulers who commissioned it knew they were sealing poison into the most sacred space in their civilization. They did it deliberately. They sealed the door behind it and walked away. That choice, the decision to make the holiest room they possessed literally deadly to enter, tells us something enormous about what this place meant to them. We just do not have the vocabulary to say exactly what. Mercury in the ancient world. This is not the first time. Now, before you start thinking Teotihuacan is some bizarre one-off, I need to stop you right there, because when I first went down this particular rabbit hole, I genuinely had to put my laptop down and take a walk. What I found was not a footnote. It was a pattern, and patterns are where things get serious. Let us go to China first. Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, died in 210 BCE and was buried in a sealed mausoleum that has never been fully excavated. Ancient texts written by the historian Sima Qian about a century after the emperor's death describe something extraordinary inside that tomb. Rivers of mercury, an entire map of the empire recreated underground, with its waterways and seas rendered in flowing liquid metal, kept in constant motion by mechanical devices. For centuries, scholars read that and thought, poetic exaggeration, dramatic ancient storytelling, lovely imagery, probably not literal. Then, in 1980, soil surveys above the sealed burial mound detected anomalously high concentrations of mercury in the earth directly above the tomb. The ancient texts were not exaggerating. There is mercury in there, enormous quantities of it, and that tomb, like the chambers beneath Teotihuacan, has never been opened. Two civilizations, two sealed underground chambers, two deliberate mercury rivers, separated by 8,000 miles and several centuries. Neither of them opened, both of them waiting. I am not saying that is not a coincidence on purpose. Actually, I am absolutely saying that, but it does not stop there, because the Maya were doing it too. Liquid mercury has been found at Quirigua in Guatemala, at Lamanai in Belize, and at El Paraíso in Honduras. In each case, it appeared in elite burial and ritual contexts. The Maya associated liquid mercury with rulership, with sacred power, with whatever they believed lay on the other side of death. Just like Teotihuacan, just like China, this is not a coincidence. This is a pattern spanning multiple continents, multiple cultures, multiple centuries, none of whom had any contact with each other. And the pattern says this clearly. When the most powerful ancient civilizations on Earth wanted to mark something as supremely sacred, as the most significant thing they possessed, they used liquid mercury to say so. Not gold, not jade, not any of the materials we typically associate with ancient wealth and power. Liquid metal, toxic, reflective, strange, and deeply deliberate. Why this substance specifically? What did they understand about mercury or believe about it that elevated it above everything else available to them? What property, physical or spiritual, made it the universal language of the sacred? That question does not have a clean answer. And honestly, the fact that it does not should bother you a lot more than it probably does right now. What is the mercury actually doing there? All right, so we have established that the mercury is real, that it is deliberate, that it is part of a cross-cultural pattern, and that it is genuinely strange. Now comes the harder question. What is it actually for? What were the builders of Teotihuacan trying to accomplish by placing liquid mercury beneath their most sacred pyramid? There are several serious theories, and I want to walk through each of them honestly, including the parts where each theory runs into problems. The first and most widely discussed theory is cosmological symbolism. In Mesoamerican belief systems broadly, and this is a generalization across diverse cultures, so bear with me, the underworld was frequently conceived of as a watery realm, a subterranean space through which the dead traveled. The Maya underworld, Xibalba, was described as a place of rivers and dark water. The Aztec afterlife involved crossing bodies of water guided by a dog companion. The idea of underground water as a passageway between the living world and the realm of the dead was widespread and deeply embedded across these cultures. If the builders of Teotihuacan shared this cosmological framework, then a river of liquid mercury in the deepest accessible chamber beneath their greatest pyramid is not bizarre at all. It is a literal physical representation of the boundary between this world and whatever they believed lay beyond it. They were not just representing the underworld, they were building it, underground, in liquid metal. The second theory is that the mercury marks a royal tomb. This is still Sergio Gomez's primary working hypothesis after 17 years of excavation. The logic goes like this. The only comparable use of mercury in burial contexts in other cultures is associated with royalty and divine rulership. The position of the tunnel directly beneath the pyramid of the feathered serpent, combined with the scale of the construction, the sealed chambers, and the elaborate offerings already found in the tunnel, all suggest this is the final resting place of Teotihuacan's founder or founding rulers. The mercury is a marker, the most emphatic possible marker. It says, in a language made of toxic liquid metal, that whatever is behind this point is of the highest possible sacred significance. The third theory is more technical and frankly more unsettling. Some researchers have proposed that the mercury was not purely symbolic but functional. Liquid mercury has a perfectly reflective surface. It functions as a mirror. In a torchlit underground chamber, a pool of liquid mercury would reflect light in ways that could appear supernatural, even divine. If the chambers at the end of this tunnel were designed as a space for ritual experience, for communication with the divine or with ancestors, then a floor covered in liquid mirror would create exactly the kind of overwhelming, reality-altering visual environment that sacred ritual spaces across cultures have aimed to produce. This theory suggests these builders understood optics, understood the manipulation of light and perception, understood how to engineer a transcendent experience, and were sophisticated enough to import toxic heavy metals across hundreds of miles in order to achieve it. None of these theories are mutually exclusive, by the way. The mercury could be cosmologically symbolic and mark a royal tomb and create a ritual optical environment simultaneously. The ancient world did not compartmentalize meaning the way we do, but here is the uncomfortable truth that all three theories share. Each one requires us to accept that the builders of Teotihuacan possessed a level of intentionality, planning, and cosmological sophistication that we have not given them credit for. And that discomfort, that resistance to fully accepting the implications of this evidence, has quietly shaped how slowly this story has traveled beyond specialist archaeology circles. The three chambers and what may be inside. Let us talk about the rooms themselves, because this is the part of the story that I think gets under your skin the most once you really sit with it. The ground-penetrating radar has given us a shape. 3 chambers arranged in a cruciform pattern at the end of the tunnel, approximately 60 feet below the surface, sealed for nearly 1900 years. The radar has shown us objects inside these rooms. Large objects, dense, reflective masses, consistent with offerings on a significant scale. Shapes that researchers have cautiously described as potentially including carved figures, stacked vessels, and materials whose reflective density suggests jade, pyrite, or other precious stones. Based on what was already found further up the tunnel, which included thousands of objects, rubber balls, jade pieces, jaguar remains, wooden objects, pottery, skin of rubber, seeds, and what appeared to be an entire miniature landscape with pools built from pyrite to simulate water, The expectation for the sealed chambers is almost too large to process calmly. If the tunnel leading to these rooms contained thousands of extraordinary offerings over 330 feet, what was placed in the rooms that the tunnel was built to reach? And yet, the chambers have not been opened. This is not negligence. This is not bureaucratic delay, although I will say archaeology funding and governmental decision-making being what they are, that is also perhaps a small factor. The primary reason is preservation. The moment you open a sealed chamber that has been airtight for nearly 1900 years, you change the chemistry of everything inside it. Organic materials that have survived in a stable sealed environment can deteriorate within hours of exposure to modern air. Pigments fade, textiles dissolve, biological materials collapse. If there are perishable offerings inside those chambers, a too rapid opening could destroy in a day what survived 19 centuries. The team is also dealing with the mercury itself. Excavating through pooled liquid mercury is not a simple operation. It requires specialist equipment, protective measures, and extraordinary care to avoid both physical contamination and the destruction of any artifacts submerged in or adjacent to the pools. There is also, and I want to say this directly because it matters, a political and cultural dimension to this that cannot be ignored. Teotihuacan is not just an archaeological site. It is a living sacred site for indigenous Mexican communities. The decision to open sealed chambers beneath a pyramid of this significance is not purely a scientific question. It is a question about who has authority over the past and whose cultural heritage is being handled. These conversations are ongoing and they are serious, and they deserve to be taken seriously. What we know is this: those 3 chambers exist. They are filled with something. The radar has shown us enough to know that what is in there is significant, and they are waiting, sealed and dark and still, 60 feet beneath the stone. The civilization that should not exist. Here is what I keep coming back to every time I go deep into the Teotihuacan research. And this is the chapter I almost did not write, because it is the one that sounds the most like the kind of breathless, ancient mystery content I generally try to avoid. But the problem is, the facts support the breathlessness, so I am going to say it plainly. Teotihuacan should not exist. Not as it is, not at the time it was built, not with the characteristics it demonstrates. I am not suggesting anything supernatural here. I am not suggesting anything about lost civilizations in the science fiction sense. What I am saying is that Teotihuacan does not fit the model. Every framework archaeologists have developed for how early complex civilizations emerge and develop, Teotihuacan violates. Standard model. Early civilizations are organized around a ruler. They have royal tombs, royal inscriptions, royal imagery. Egypt had pharaohs. The Maya had divine kings. The Aztecs had emperors. Teotihuacan, despite being one of the largest cities on Earth at its peak, has yielded no confirmed royal tomb, no identified single ruler, no royal portrait sculpture in the style typical of Mesoamerican cultures. The city may have been governed by a council or a collective leadership structure, which is an extraordinarily sophisticated political arrangement for a city of this age and scale. Standard model. Early cities are organized around survival needs with hierarchical residential areas showing clear elite and commoner distinctions. Teotihuacan has apartment complexes, actual planned residential apartment complexes, each housing multiple family units, each showing evidence of private interior spaces and courtyards. The standard of living in these apartment complexes, based on archaeological evidence of nutrition and material goods, was remarkably consistent across different areas of the city. This suggests a level of social organization and civic planning that most civilizations did not achieve until considerably later in history. Standard model. Civilizations grow and develop their technical capabilities over time. But as the radar scans and tunnel excavations make increasingly clear, the most sophisticated engineering at Teotihuacan appears to be among the oldest. The tunnel beneath the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent was constructed at the city's founding or close to it. The Mercury was placed there at or near the beginning. The astronomical alignments of the city's major structures have been shown to be precise to a degree that required advanced survey knowledge from the very start. Nobody learned to build Teotihuacan. They arrived already knowing how to build Teotihuacan. And then, around 550 CE, after centuries of being one of the most powerful and influential cities in the ancient Americas, the city was partially burned and abandoned, not conquered, not destroyed by outsiders. The burning appears to have been internal and selective, targeting administrative and elite structures specifically. The people left, and they left no record of where they went or why. The civilization that built a river of liquid mercury beneath their pyramid, that engineered a city of over 100,000 people with planned apartments and a precise street grid that somehow predates its own sophistication, simply walked away. And we are still standing here, holding our radar equipment, trying to figure out who they were. What this really means. I want to end this the way I always try to end things on this channel, not with an answer, because honestly, I do not have one, and I am suspicious of people who claim they do, but with the right question. The liquid mercury river beneath Teotihuacan is not just a strange archaeological footnote. It is evidence of intentionality at a scale and sophistication that demands a serious response. These were not primitive people stumbling through their history. They were sophisticated thinkers who made deliberate choices, who understood materials and cosmology and engineering well enough to build something that has outlasted their entire civilization by nearly 2,000 years and is still generating profound questions in the 21st century. The radar scans have shown us that there is more to find. Those 3 sealed chambers represent the most significant potential archaeological discovery in the Americas in living memory. Whatever is inside them was placed there by people who understood exactly what they were doing and believed it was important enough to seal away forever, or perhaps more accurately, to preserve until the right moment. Here is what the Mercury River tells us, stripped of everything else. Ancient human beings were capable of conceptual sophistication that we have consistently underestimated. They were capable of asking the same questions we ask, about death, about divinity, about what lies beneath. And they were capable of answering those questions in liquid metal and stone and sealed darkness in ways that 19 centuries have not erased. The standard story of ancient Mesoamerica says that complex civilization in the Americas built upward slowly, developed in stages, left records we can trace and verify. Teotihuacan says something different. Teotihuacan says that there are chapters of human capability that we have not read yet. That the story of what people were able to think and build and believe is older and stranger and more extraordinary than the version we have been comfortable telling. Those 3 chambers are still sealed, the mercury is still there, and somewhere in the darkness beneath the pyramid of the feathered serpent, whatever the founders of one of Earth's great lost civilizations decided was important enough to hide at the center of everything they built is still waiting. We have the radar now. We can see the shape of what is down there. The question is whether we are ready to understand what we are looking at when we finally open the door. I am Justine. This has been Uncovered Expedition, and I will see you in the next one, assuming the liquid mercury fumes have not gotten to me first. I am kidding. Mostly.